Estate agents are amongst the 5 least trusted professionals in 2023, with just 28% of 1,000 respondents trusting them to tell the truth. Now, they did fare better than journalists at 21%, advertising executives at 16%, government ministers at 10%, and no surprise, politicians at 9% at the bottom. For many landlords in the UK, hiring a letting agent is a no-brainer. Someone who can deal with the tenants, collect the rent, deal with the property management issues, whilst you sit back and collect the income. But not all letting agents really provide the service that landlords expect. Hidden fees, poor tenant management, and lack of transparency can cost landlords money, time, and peace of mind. So if you've ever been frustrated by a letting agent, you're not alone. So I'm going to share with you the most common pitfall to watch out for, but also how to protect yourself. Stay tuned. First up is agents buying your listing. Let me share with you a story of Laura, a landlady who learned the hard way that tempting promises from agents can come at a price. So Laura had a sitting tenant for a couple of years, and naturally the time came whereby she had to renew with this tenant, and her existing agent provided her with fair market price to propose to the tenant, something that was reasonable and in line with recent lettings. But then came another agent knocking at her door. Eager to win her business, they dangled a higher rental price and promised they can achieve it. This was an offer too tempting for Laura to turn down. There was a problem though. The tenant wasn't willing to pay this inflated price and reluctantly packed their bags and left. But Laura felt she was okay because after all, this new agent had promised and guaranteed that they'll be able to achieve this figure. Weeks went past and the property sat vacant, and the promised tenants, well, they never materialized, and reality hit. The market wasn't as strong as the new agent had claimed. And the problem was that the landlady had then had to reduce the price to the price that the original tenant had been happy to pay. Except now she had weeks of void period, lost rent, and now had the uncertainty to deal with a new tenant. The big takeaway from this story is if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is, and there are lots of agents out there to overpromise to win your business. The reality is any type of valuation should be backed up by evidence. So don't fall for this trap. Choose an agent that gives you facts and not false promises. This next one is a landlord's worst nightmare. An unresponsive agent. Calls go unanswered, emails get ignored, and when a main tenant issue comes up, as a landlord, you're the last to know. And the problem with this is that it snowballs into other problems as well, because if you're having this lack of response from your agent, chances are that your tenant is having the same experience. And this is where things that could have been resolved and ironed out very quickly snowballs into bigger and bigger problems with your tenant having complaints after complaint. But that's just one part from the communication side. Then you have your property itself. If they are not doing regular inspections or at least communicating to you with problems, these are problems from the property that perhaps will cost you a couple of £100, easily start becoming thousands of pounds because they weren't attended to in a timely manner. That is something that you do not want. And how to avoid this with your letting agent? Well, have a family member that has a saying that says, with the quality of your breakfast, you know exactly what you're going to have the quality of your lunch. So this meaning that the interaction and communication that you have at the very beginning of the relationship with this agent pretty much going to set the standards moving on. And one would also think that this type of behavior leaves a trail. So Google reviews or other type of reviews are online before you instruct this type of agent. And just making sure that you set clear expectations with them before signing them to instruct them as an agent for yourself. If you're a self-managing agent, we always provide some great tips on this channel, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a thing. If you've been a landlord in the UK for a few years, you'll remember the days whereby an agent can charge the tenant fees and also yourself as a landlord. And if they were a good agent, that would be balanced out. However, since 2019, we've had the tenant fee ban, meaning that agents can no longer charge tenants any type of fees. And since then, well, agents have been quite creative in charging landlords extra fees. One national firm actually charges something called horizon scanning, meaning that they're charging a monthly fee to keep up with legislation, something that should just be basic for agents. Otherwise, what are you paying them for, right? Now, how can you avoid this? Well, first up is make sure you review those terms and conditions. The reality is that agents have different structures. Some have lower monthly fees for you, and therefore the extras come in place, which can be fair. But the important thing is to look at those terms and conditions, and any vague terms, just question them so you're both clear and have the same expectations. A bad tenant can turn a great investment into a financial disaster. Let me share with you a story that illustrates how this becomes a higher risk for you. So this story is of Jim, a landlord with a property in central London. Naturally, he wanted to get the best possible money for his rental property investment, and he thought he would hire 3 different agents. He believes that by having 3 agents, he creates tenant competition. More tenants, more money, potentially in terms of getting a higher bidding. However, what Jim has actually created is agent competition. And what ends up happening is the agent rushes the referencing process, something that you simply do not want to do, because in Jim's case, ended up having a problematic tenant who wasn't just challenging, but also ended up not paying the rent further down the line and having to evict them. Now, Jim could have avoided this if the referencing process had been done properly. If you're finding this video helpful, make sure you smash that like button. It really motivates me in pushing more of these videos out there. So what does a thorough referencing process entail? Well, I'm going to highlight the critical parts because the financial referencing of your tenant is going to be very important. First up is a lot of landlords believe that just by going to the employer and getting that reference from the employer is enough. Well, in today's world, there are a lot of scams, and just getting the reference from the employer isn't enough. There are referencing processes whereby it goes directly to the HMRC and they can know exactly what kind of pay slips they're actually getting directly from HMRC. To be even more thorough, you may want to get a signed contract of the workplace of that tenant. Secondly, contact the actual employer themselves, look at the pay slips and cross-reference them with bank statements. And of course, you've got your landlord referencing and all your credit checks, checking for bankruptcies and CCJs. But under the same context, I want to talk to you about insurance-based deposits. Now, this is whereby an insurance company actually vouches for the tenant instead of the tenant paying you 5 weeks rent. And you've got to be wary with this because a lot of agents, they actually earn commission by pushing this type of service upon you. This is something that you want to look out for. Now, in my opinion, a tenant who actually has some skin in the game, paying you the 5 weeks instead of paying an insurance deposit, is going to be a tenant that's going to look after your property. Ask your agent to explain their referencing process in detail. If you're going for a managed service, make sure they ask you for your final approval before your tenant moves in. And finally, opt for traditional deposits. At the moment, you can ask for 5 weeks legally, 5 weeks rent as a security deposit. Unnecessary replacement and costly repairs. Sound familiar? A washing machine door is not locking properly and suddenly you get an email from the agent saying they're going to replace a washing machine. Well, the problem is that for many agents it's easier to replace the machine but not necessarily cheaper for you. Some agents don't even bother looking at repair options, even at the high-end machines whereby it becomes so expensive to replace. Now sometimes it's fair that it's better off to actually replace it, but then it is on a case-by-case basis. It's important for you as a landlord to ask what process the agent has when these type of problems arise and to provide you with some type of report and evidence of whether it is worthwhile taking a replacement or a repair. Always ask about repair options before agreeing to replacements. Get second opinions, especially for those costly items. And if an agent's always saying that replacement is best, push back and investigate. If you're a landlord and you're constantly having to chase for updates, dealing with hidden costs, and just overall dealing with avoidable issues, it might be time for you to change agents. Now, red flags to watch out for would be an unresponsive agent or not providing transparency, rent collection delays, and just overall complaints from tenants over and over again. Remember, agents are here to make your life easier, to give you peace of mind, not to make it more difficult. And if you want to check out the #1 mistake landlords should avoid in 2025, make sure you watch my next video.